The city was alive with noise. Car horns blared, people shouted, and the smell of street food mixed with the faint scent of rain on asphalt. Among all this chaos, a small girl named Nia sat quietly on the edge of the sidewalk. Her blanket was worn, frayed at the edges, and her shoes were too big, slipping off her small feet whenever she moved. She was only 12, but life had already taught her to be strong, careful, and always alert. Nia's eyes scanned the street constantly. She noticed the way people hurried past her without a second glance. She noticed the way some stared at her with pity, or worse, with suspicion. She had learned to ignore both. Her world was hard, but Nia had something many people didn't: courage and a sharp mind that could spot danger from a distance. Across the street, a black luxury car rolled to a stop. The door opened and a man in a dark, tailored suit stepped out. Mr. Henry was tall, his posture straight and confident. He moved with the kind of careful precision that only people used to power and wealth could carry. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was a man who owned businesses, buildings, and even a private fleet of cars. Yet today he looked tired, distracted, and almost human. Henry walked toward a small food cart at the corner of the street. He ordered a sandwich and a juice, paying without hesitation. He didn't look at the price or the vendor. To him, food was simple. Just something to fill the stomach, something he had never worried about too deeply. Nia watched him with wide eyes. She had seen plenty of people eating street food before, but something about this man made her uneasy. Maybe it was his confidence or the way he handled the food without care. She knew the dangers that could hide in food left out on a busy street, handled carelessly or prepared in a hurry. Summoning all her courage, she spoke up, her voice cutting through the street noise. "Don't eat that." The sound startled Henry. He turned sharply and saw a small girl standing across the street pointing at his sandwich. Her eyes were bright, her expression serious, and her voice was firm, not playful or joking. Henry raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" he asked, stepping closer to hear her better. "That food? You shouldn't eat it." Nia's voice was urgent now. She took a step closer, the blanket around her shoulders fluttering slightly in the wind. "You don't know what's in it. You could get very sick." Henry chuckled softly, thinking it was a child being bold for attention. "It's just a sandwich," he said. "Why shouldn't I eat it?" Nia shook her head. "No, you really shouldn't. Street food can be dangerous if you're not careful. People might not wash their hands, or the food might be old, or—" She stopped, realizing she could go on forever. "Please, don't eat it." "I know what I'm talking about." Henry studied the girl. She was small, maybe no older than 12 or 13, but she stood as if she had the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her brown eyes were serious, intelligent, and unwavering. Something in him stirred, a mixture of curiosity and concern. "All right," he said slowly. "Why are you so sure about this?" Nia hesitated. She had spent her life learning to survive on the streets, watching people, noticing patterns, and understanding dangers that most adults ignored. She could sense when something wasn't right. "Because I've seen it before. People eat things without checking and they get hurt. I don't want that to happen to you." Henry smiled, impressed by her courage. Most people would ignore a street child, maybe even shoo her away. But Nia's seriousness and knowledge made him pause. He glanced at the food cart. The vendor was busy talking on the phone, moving quickly from one sandwich to another. The place wasn't dirty, but it wasn't perfect either. And Henry realized that, despite his experience in business and life, he had almost taken something risky without thinking. "All right," Henry said, handing the sandwich back to the vendor. "I'll listen to you." Nia exhaled a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. She stepped closer, careful to keep her distance. "Thank you. People don't usually listen to me. Most just ignore me." Henry nodded, sensing there was more to this girl than met the eye. "You're very brave," he said. "Not many kids would speak up like that." Nia shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant, but her heart was racing. "I have to. If I don't speak up, someone could get hurt, even someone rich like you." Henry laughed quietly. There was a strange contrast in this moment. A billionaire and a homeless girl, standing on a busy street talking about food safety. He felt an unexpected connection to her honesty and courage. "Do you want something to eat?" he asked, surprising himself with the question. Nia's eyes widened. She wasn't used to offers like this. Usually people ignored her or gave her coins, not food. I don't know," she said cautiously. Henry pointed to a small cafe across the street. Come with me. I'll buy you something safe, something warm. Nia hesitated. She had learned to be careful. People who seemed kind sometimes had hidden intentions, but something in Henry's tone and the careful way he watched her made her feel like she could trust him, at least a little. Slowly, she nodded. Okay, but I'm not eating anything from strangers without looking first. Henry smiled. Fair enough. They walked across the street together, drawing curious looks from passers-by. A small girl in rags walking with a man in a suit was not something people saw every day. Nia felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. She had never been inside a real cafe before. Henry ordered a hot sandwich, soup, and juice for Nia, making sure everything was freshly prepared. She watched him carefully, still cautious, but she could tell he genuinely wanted her to be safe. As they sat down at a small table by the window, Nia finally relaxed a little. She took a small bite of her sandwich, savoring the warmth and taste. It was unlike anything she had eaten in weeks. Henry studied her quietly. You're very observant, he said after a moment. You notice things most people miss. How did you learn to be so careful? Nia shrugged. Life teaches you quickly when you live on the streets. You have to watch everything, notice everything. People who ignore things get hurt. Henry nodded, impressed. He realized that despite her circumstances, Nia had developed skills that many adults didn't have. Her bravery, her quick thinking, and her honesty were remarkable. For the first time in a long time, Henry felt like he was seeing the world through fresh eyes, not as a billionaire used to control and comfort, but as a human being, listening to someone who had learned to survive against all odds. As they finished their meal, Nia felt a strange sense of hope. Maybe this encounter would change something in her life. She didn't know how or when, but she could feel that this meeting with Henry was important. Henry, on the other hand, felt something he hadn't felt in years. A sense of humility and connection. He realized that courage and intelligence didn't come from wealth or status. Sometimes they came from the most unexpected places. By the time they left the cafe, a bond had quietly formed between them. Henry promised himself he would help Nia in any way he could, and Nia knew that for the first time in a long time, she had someone watching her back. Outside, the city continued its noise and chaos, but for a moment, in a small corner of a busy street, a billionaire and a homeless girl had met, and both had learned something valuable, that courage, honesty, and attention could bridge worlds, no matter how different they seemed. As Nia walked back to her usual spot, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, life was about to change for her, and Henry, driving away in his sleek car, thought about the small girl who had warned him, realizing that sometimes the smallest voices could make the biggest difference. Little did they know, this encounter was just the beginning. Danger, challenges, and unexpected surprises were waiting ahead, but together they had taken the first step towards something extraordinary. The next morning, the city seemed different to Nia. The streets were louder, the air colder, and the people moved faster than usual. She wrapped her worn blanket tightly around her small frame and hugged her knees as she sat on the familiar sidewalk corner. Her stomach growled, reminding her that yesterday's warmth and food were fleeting comforts. Life on the streets was relentless, but the memory of meeting Mr. Henry lingered. She thought about his eyes, kind, curious, and careful. Most adults ignored her, looked past her, or sometimes treated her with suspicion. Henry had done something different.
He had listened.
He had cared. For reasons she didn't yet understand, Nia felt a quiet spark of hope that maybe life could be a little different. Meanwhile, Mr. Henry was already in his office, reviewing papers and phone messages. But his thoughts kept drifting back to the small girl on the street. She had spoken so boldly, so clearly, warning him about something he had almost ignored. He realized that in his world of wealth and influence, he had grown accustomed to being cautious about business deals and investments, but not about the simple things, like food. Henry remembered the way she had stood there, unafraid, insisting he listen. That courage had surprised him, and now he wondered how many other small but important things he ignored every day because he thought they didn't matter. Back on the streets, Nia's attention was caught by a group of people gathered near a food cart a few blocks away. One man was arguing loudly with the vendor, and a small commotion had begun. Nia's sharp eyes noticed a problem immediately. The vendor seemed distracted, and in his rush, he didn't follow basic hygiene rules. Something wasn't right. Her instincts kicked in. Nia knew she had to act. She jumped up, clutching her blanket around her shoulders, and ran toward the cart. She had learned from experience that quick action could prevent trouble. As she approached, she saw a man reaching for a sandwich, unaware of the risks. "Wait, don't eat that," she shouted again. Her voice carried urgency, and people turned to look at her. The man stopped, startled. He was younger than Henry, but had the same confident air of someone used to getting what they wanted. He looked down at the girl, frowning. "Who are you?" he asked, clearly annoyed. "I'm someone who cares," Nia shouted, stepping closer. "You don't know where that food came from. You could get sick. You could even end up in the hospital." The crowd murmured. Some people laughed, some shook their heads, and others looked worried. But Nia didn't back down. She had learned that being small didn't mean being powerless. Knowledge and courage were stronger than fear. The man hesitated, looking at the sandwich. He noticed that the vendor's hands were not clean, that the food had been sitting out in the open air, and that the preparation area was messy. He realized the girl's warning was not just a child's whim. It was serious. "All right," he said finally, setting the sandwich down. "Why are you so sure about this?" Nia straightened her back and met his gaze. "Because I've seen it happen before. People eat things without checking and they get hurt. I don't want that to happen to you." "Even if you don't know me, I care." The man's expression softened slightly. He had been prepared to ignore her, but her determination made him pause. He realized that sometimes a small voice could carry a truth that everyone else missed. Meanwhile, Henry was receiving a call from one of his assistants. The voice on the line told him that a young girl had been speaking to a man on the street, warning him about food safety. Henry's heart skipped a beat. Could it be Nia again? He rushed to the window of his office and looked out. Sure enough, he saw a small figure wrapped in a frayed blanket standing boldly in front of the food cart. Henry's mind raced. He knew the courage it took for her to act. He decided to go to the street immediately. By the time Henry arrived, Nia had already convinced the man to step away from the food cart. Henry's presence startled the crowd. People whispered, noticing the tall, sharply dressed billionaire standing in front of a street cart. Nia looked up at him, relief and excitement shining in her eyes. "You came," she exclaimed. Henry smiled down at her. "Of course. I wanted to see if my favorite little guardian angel was at work again," he said lightly but with genuine admiration. Nia blushed but kept her focus. "This man could have gotten sick," she explained to Henry, pointing at the food cart. "The vendor isn't careful and the food has been sitting out too long. Someone needs to stop it before it happens again." Henry looked at the cart and the vendor. He realized that the girl was right. He turned to the man she had warned. "You made a smart choice. Not everyone would listen to a child. You're lucky," he said kindly. The man nodded, embarrassed but grateful. "Thank you," he said quietly. Henry then turned to Nia. "You really have a gift for noticing danger," he said. "Most people would ignore it, but you don't. That's very impressive." Nia smiled, though she felt shy under his praise. "I've had to learn. Life doesn't wait for anyone. You have to watch, you have to think, or you get hurt." Henry nodded. He felt inspired by her words. Here was a girl who had so little, yet she had more awareness, courage, and wisdom than many people he knew. He realized that life's lessons were sometimes found in the most unexpected teachers. "Do you want to come somewhere safe? Have a proper meal?" he asked. "I can't have you running around the streets risking your health." Nia hesitated. She had learned to be careful with adults, even the kind ones. But something about Henry made her trust him. "Okay," she said cautiously. Henry led her to a nearby cafe, where the staff prepared warm sandwiches, soup, and fresh juice. Nia's eyes widened as she looked around. She had rarely been inside a cafe before. The smell of warm food, the clean tables, and the friendly staff amazed her. As they sat down to eat, Nia told Henry a little about her life, how she had learned to survive on the streets, how she noticed things people overlooked, and how she dreamed of a better life. Henry listened quietly, impressed by her bravery and intelligence. "You've survived a lot," he said gently, "but you don't have to do it alone. I want to help you if you'll let me." Nia considered his words. She had heard promises before, but they rarely lasted. Something about Henry's calm voice and careful attention made her believe he was sincere. "I'll try," she said softly. They finished their meal, and Henry asked if she wanted to walk with him back to the street just to make sure she was safe. Nia agreed. As they stepped out, the city seemed a little less frightening, the noise a little less overwhelming. Henry realized that he had learned something too, that wealth and status did not replace the value of courage, honesty, and care. A small voice could make a big difference, and even billionaires sometimes needed guidance. Nia, walking beside him, felt a sense of pride. She had warned someone, helped prevent danger, and maybe even made a difference in the world, even if it was just a small one. She realized that her voice mattered, and that courage could change outcomes in ways she never imagined. As the day turned into evening, Henry made a quiet promise to himself. He would make sure Nia had opportunities, protection, and guidance. She deserved more than the streets offered, and he would do everything he could to help her. Nia didn't fully understand the world of billionaires, business deals, and responsibilities, but she knew one thing. She had found an unexpected ally, someone who saw her value, courage, and potential, and for the first time in a long time she felt hope, real hope, that life could be different. Little did they know, this was only the beginning. Challenges and unexpected events awaited both of them, but their bond had formed. A bond built on trust, bravery, and mutual respect. And as night fell over the city, Nia felt ready to face whatever came next, knowing that someone was finally watching her back. The city woke slowly the next morning. Sunlight spilled over tall buildings, casting long shadows on the streets below. Nia sat on her usual corner, her worn blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. But today something felt different. The air seemed charged, full of small noises and movements that made her senses sharper than usual. She had grown used to reading the city like a map. Every sound, smell, and motion mattered. She glanced at the cafe across the street where she had eaten safely with Henry the day before. Memories of warmth and kindness lingered. For the first time, Nia felt that maybe life could be a little easier, a little brighter. But life on the streets rarely gave someone a break. Meanwhile, Henry was already in his office reviewing business plans and messages, but his thoughts kept drifting to Nia. He had been thinking all night about the courage of that small girl, warning him about the food, standing her ground in front of strangers, and helping a man avoid danger. He realized that her bravery and awareness were qualities he had rarely seen in anyone, let alone a 12-year-old. Henry had promised himself he would help her, but he knew he needed to be careful. He could not simply hand her a life of comfort. Nia was strong, independent, and wise beyond her years. He wanted to find a way to guide her safely while letting her keep her independence and courage. As Nia walked toward the street to find a meal, she noticed a commotion a few blocks away. A small crowd had gathered near another food cart. People were arguing, and a few were waving their hands in frustration. Nia's sharp eyes caught the problem immediately. The vendor was hurried, ignoring basic cleanliness and preparing food too quickly. Something dangerous was about to happen if no one acted. Without hesitation, Nia ran toward the crowd. She knew the risks. She could be ignored, pushed, or even mocked. But she could not stand by and watch someone get hurt. "Stop, don't eat that," she shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. A young man, around Henry's age, holding a sandwich, froze. He looked down at her, puzzled and annoyed. "Who are you?" he asked. "Someone who cares," Nia shouted, stepping closer. "That food isn't safe. The vendor isn't careful. You could get sick," the crowd murmured. Some laughed, some whispered, and a few watched quietly. Nia didn't waver. She had learned that her voice mattered, even if people didn't always believe her. The man glanced at the food in his hands. He noticed the vendor's messy area and unwashed hands. Slowly, realization dawned on him. This girl's warning was not empty. She was right. Henry arrived at the scene just in time. He had been notified by his assistant about the situation and rushed to make sure everything was safe. As he stepped out of his car, the crowd parted slightly, noticing his presence. People recognized him, a billionaire walking toward a street cart with a small girl. Some whispered, others watched with curiosity. Nia looked up and saw him. "You came," she called, relief and excitement in her voice. Henry smiled warmly. "Of course. I wanted to make sure my favorite little guardian angel was doing all right," he said, kneeling slightly to meet her eyes. Nia blushed, but kept her focus. She turned to the young man and gestured toward the cart. "You were about to eat that. It could have made you very sick." The man nodded slowly, setting the sandwich down. I didn't realize, he said quietly. Thank you. Henry turned to Nia, admiration in his eyes. You really have a gift, he said. Most people would ignore danger or think it's none of their business. But you act. You pay attention. That's rare, Nia shrugged. I've had to learn. Life doesn't wait for anyone. You have to notice things or you get hurt. Henry nodded. And you're very brave. Most adults would be afraid to speak up in front of strangers like this. Nia felt a small smile form. She had never thought of herself as brave, only careful. But Henry's words gave her a sense of pride she hadn't felt in a long time. Do you want to come somewhere safe and have a warm meal? Henry asked. You shouldn't be out here risking your health every day. Nia hesitated. She had learned to be cautious with adults, even kind ones. But there was something genuine about Henry. He had proven himself trustworthy yesterday, and now he was here again. Okay, she said quietly. Henry led her to the nearby cafe, the same place where they had shared a meal before. The staff greeted them warmly, and Nia's eyes widened as she took in the smells of fresh bread, warm soup, and hot coffee. She had rarely been inside such a clean, safe place. As they ate together, Nia shared more about her life, how she had survived on the streets, how she noticed dangers, and how she had learned to protect herself and others. Henry listened quietly, impressed by her intelligence, awareness, and courage. You've faced a lot, Henry said gently, but you don't have to do it alone anymore. I want to help you if you'll let me. Nia considered his words. She had been promised help before, but people often let her down. Something about Henry's calm, careful attention made her believe he was sincere. I'll try, she said softly. After finishing their meal, Henry suggested walking with her back to her usual spot, just to make sure she was safe. Nia agreed. The city was bustling, but for the first time she felt less afraid. She felt like she had an ally, someone who truly cared. Henry reflected on the situation. He realized that courage, honesty, and awareness were qualities more important than wealth, power, or influence. Nia's bravery had saved lives today, and yesterday, and he could learn from her as much as she could learn from him. Nia, walking beside him, felt a quiet sense of pride. She had prevented danger, helped others, and proven that even a small voice could make a difference. For the first time in a long while, she believed that her life could change. As they returned to her corner, Henry made a private promise. He would do everything he could to help Nia have a safer life, one with opportunities, guidance, and protection. She deserved more than the streets could offer, and he would be there to ensure that. Nia didn't fully understand the world of Billionaire's offices and responsibilities, but she understood one thing. Someone had seen her, truly seen her, and cared. That recognition gave her strength, hope, and determination. The sun began to set, casting golden light across the city. Nia watched the shadows stretch along the streets, feeling a sense of readiness. She had faced dangers, spoken up, and survived. With Henry's support, she knew she could face whatever came next. Little did they know, the challenges ahead would test both of them, not just their courage, but their trust, intelligence, and compassion. And yet, in this quiet moment, a bond had formed between them, a bond built on respect, bravery, and the knowledge that even the smallest voice could make the biggest difference. Nia tucked her blanket tighter around her shoulders, feeling a spark of hope. Henry watched her, feeling inspired by her wisdom and courage. The city continued its noise and chaos, but in a small corner, two very different people had connected in a way that would change their lives forever. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, and new lessons. But together, Nia and Henry had proven that attention, care, and bravery could overcome fear, and that even the smallest voice could shape the world. The city streets were quieter than usual that morning, with only a few cars moving along the main avenue and pedestrians hurrying to their workplaces. Nia sat in her usual spot, her blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She had gotten used to the rhythm of the city, the sounds, the smells, and the patterns of people moving around her. But today something felt different. There was a tension in the air that she couldn't explain. She noticed a group of men near a food cart across the street. They were speaking quietly, but their gestures were sharp and hurried. Nia's instincts told her that trouble was brewing. She had learned over the years that the city often hid danger behind ordinary routines, and her senses were finely tuned to notice it. Meanwhile, Henry was in his office, preparing for the day when his phone rang. It was his assistant sounding unusually worried. "Sir, there's a situation on Main Street. A young girl is involved. You might want to see it for yourself." Henry's heart skipped a beat. Could it be Nia again? Without hesitation, he grabbed his coat and headed out. He had promised himself he would always watch over her, and he wasn't about to let anything happen to her. As he arrived near the food cart, he saw Nia standing boldly in front of the men, her small figure seemingly unafraid despite the potential danger. Her voice rang out clearly. "Stop, don't touch that. You don't know what you're doing." The men glanced at her with surprise. One of them stepped forward, frowning. "Who are you, little girl? You shouldn't be interfering." Nia held her ground. "I may be small, but I notice things others don't. You could get hurt. That food isn't safe. Step back." Henry approached carefully, his presence commanding attention. The crowd around them shifted as people noticed the tall man in a dark suit standing near the girl. "Is everything all right here?" he asked calmly but firmly. One of the men hesitated. They had not expected a billionaire to appear in such a situation, and they were unsure how to react. Nia looked up at Henry and nodded subtly, relieved that he had arrived. "Sir," Nia said quickly, "these men were about to take food from the cart that isn't safe. The vendor isn't careful and they could get sick." Henry studied the situation. The men looked rough but not dangerous. Still, he knew that even minor carelessness could turn into a serious problem. "All right," he said, "let's handle this carefully. Please step back, everyone." The men glanced at each other and then at Henry. They saw authority in his posture and voice and finally moved aside. Nia breathed a small sigh of relief, knowing she had prevented a possible problem. After the tension eased, Henry knelt slightly to meet Nia's eyes. "You're very brave," he said. "Most people would have been scared and walked away, but you stepped in. That takes courage." Nia blushed, looking down at her feet. "I have to. Someone has to notice these things. If I don't, who will?" Henry smiled. "And because of your courage, no one got hurt today. That's something to be proud of." Nia felt a small sense of pride. She had saved others once again, but she also realized that danger could appear anywhere at any time. The city was unpredictable and she had to stay alert. Henry suggested that they go to the cafe again, where Nia could have a warm meal and rest for a while. She agreed, happy for the safety and comfort it offered. As they walked, Henry asked, "How do you stay so calm in situations like this? I've seen people panic over much smaller things." Nia shrugged. "Life has taught me. I've seen people get hurt when they don't pay attention. I've learned to notice danger early and act before it becomes a problem." Henry nodded thoughtfully. He realized that the small girl he had met yesterday had skills that even adults often lacked. Her intelligence, courage, and awareness were remarkable. At the cafe, Nia sat quietly while Henry ordered a hot meal for her. She was used to being ignored, but Henry treated her with respect and attention. For the first time in a long while, she felt valued, not just for her survival skills, but for who she was. As she ate, Henry watched her carefully. "You know," he said softly, "I've been thinking. You have a gift, but life on the streets is dangerous. I want to help you, but I also want to make sure you keep your independence and strength. Do you understand?" Nia nodded slowly. "I understand. But I don't want to lose myself either. I want to stay brave and smart, not scared and weak." Henry smiled. "That's exactly why I want to guide you carefully. I won't take away your courage. I'll just make sure you're safe while you grow stronger." After finishing her meal, Nia and Henry walked back toward her usual spot. The city had changed slightly. More people were on the streets and the sounds of daily life returned. But Nia felt more confident than before. She had someone looking out for her, and that made a difference. As they approached her corner, Henry noticed a man watching from a distance. His posture was rigid and his eyes followed Nia intently. Henry's instincts told him that the man was curious, perhaps even suspicious. He knew that the city always had new challenges and that not everyone had good intentions. He leaned down to Nia. "Be careful," he whispered. "Someone is watching us. I'm not sure who he is, but I want you to stay alert." Nia's eyes narrowed. "I can handle it. I've learned to notice people like him." Henry nodded, impressed. He knew she was right, but he also knew that caution was always wise. The city had many surprises, and even the brave needed allies. As they watched, the man finally turned and walked away. Nia relaxed slightly but kept her senses sharp. She had learned that danger often appeared in subtle ways, and being prepared could make all the difference. Henry placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're ready for challenges, but you're not alone anymore. I'll be here to help whenever you need me." Nia smiled faintly, feeling a warmth she hadn't experienced in a long time. She had faced danger, prevented harm, and now had someone she could trust. For the first time, she believed that life could offer more than just survival. It could offer hope, guidance, and even friendship. As the day turned to evening, Nia and Henry parted ways for the night. Nia returned to her usual corner, her blanket wrapped tightly, her mind buzzing with thoughts. She knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she felt ready. She had courage, awareness, and now a trusted ally. Henry drove away in his sleek car, reflecting on the day. He realized that life's most important lessons often came from the most unexpected sources. Nia had taught him bravery, honesty, and vigilance, qualities that money could never buy. Both of them knew that the path ahead would not be easy. There would be danger, challenges, and tests of trust, but together, they had begun a journey that would change their lives forever. Nia's courage and Henry's guidance would help them navigate the city's dangers, showing that even in a world full of chaos, courage, care, and attention could make a difference. As the city lights flickered on, illuminating the streets and sidewalks, Nia looked up at the sky. Stars were faint but visible between the tall buildings. She felt a small spark of hope. She had survived many days on the streets, faced dangers, and now had someone who truly cared. Henry, in his car, thought about the small girl who had warned him not to eat unsafe food. Her bravery had changed more than just one meal. It had changed his perspective and perhaps one day the lives of many others. The night was calm, but both knew that tomorrow would bring new tests. Challenges would come, but so would opportunities for courage, learning, and growth. And together they were ready to face them, side by side, proving that even the smallest voice could make the biggest difference. The city was quiet in the early morning, but Nia was already awake. She sat on her blanket, watching the streets slowly fill with life. Cars moved past, people hurried to work, and the aroma of breakfast food drifted from the street carts. Despite the familiar sights and sounds, Nia felt a sense of anticipation. Something told her today would be different. She had grown accustomed to life on the streets, the uncertainty, the hunger, the constant need to stay alert. But her encounters with Henry had changed something inside her. For the first time, she felt that the world could offer more than survival. It could offer guidance, protection, and perhaps even friendship. Henry, meanwhile, had already started his day. His office buzzed with activity, but his thoughts were not on business. They were on Nia, the small, brave girl who had warned him about unsafe food and continued to show courage every day. He knew that helping her would not be simple, but he was determined. He wanted to give her a chance at a better life, without taking away the independence and strength that made her extraordinary. Later that morning, Henry arrived at Nia's corner. She looked up as he approached, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Good morning," Henry said warmly. "Are you ready for today?" Nia nodded cautiously. "I think so. What do you have planned?" Henry smiled. "I want to show you a few things that could help you. Not just survive, but grow. You don't have to follow blindly. I want you to learn and make your own choices." Nia's curiosity sparked. She had never been offered guidance like this before. Most adults ignored her or treated her as invisible. Henry treated her as someone capable, intelligent, and brave. "Okay, I'm ready." They walked through the city streets together, visiting safe places where Nia could eat, rest, and learn. Henry introduced her to friendly staff at cafes and shops, people who respected her courage and intelligence. Nia absorbed everything: the way to notice patterns in people, how to evaluate situations, and how to trust her instincts while staying safe. During a break at a quiet park, Henry spoke seriously. "Nia, I want you to understand something. Courage is important, but so is safety. You can make a difference without putting yourself in unnecessary danger. That's a skill. Learning when to act and when to observe." Nia nodded. "I understand. I've learned to notice danger, but I've never had someone teach me how to balance caution and action." Henry smiled. "Exactly. And that's why I want to help you. You're smart and brave, and I want you to grow stronger, not just survive." As the day passed, Nia realized how much she had already learned. She felt a sense of pride, knowing that her courage had saved people and that her instincts had earned respect. She looked at Henry with gratitude. Thank you for believing in me. Most people don't. Henry's expression softened. You've always had it in you. I just want to make sure the world doesn't take it away from you. Later, they walked past a familiar food cart. Nia noticed the vendor preparing sandwiches hastily, cutting corners. But this time she didn't intervene immediately. Instead, she turned to Henry. I could warn him, but maybe I should help him understand why it matters. Henry nodded. Good idea. Teaching someone is often more powerful than simply stopping them. Nia approached the vendor confidently. Sir, the way you prepare food can make people sick. I've seen it happen. If you wash your hands and handle food carefully, more people will trust you and fewer will get hurt. The vendor looked at her, surprised by her confidence. I didn't realize. Thank you for telling me, he said, adjusting how he handled the food. Nia smiled. She realized that her courage, knowledge, and kindness could help people change, not just prevent harm. As the day turned to evening, Nia and Henry returned to a quiet park. They sat on a bench watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Nia wrapped her blanket around her shoulders, feeling warmer than usual. You've grown so much in such a short time, Henry said. You're brave, smart, and kind. The world is lucky to have someone like you. Nia smiled faintly. I still have a lot to learn, but I feel ready, Henry nodded. And I'll be here to help you, but I won't take away your independence. You're strong, and your courage has value. Nia looked at him with a sense of understanding and gratitude. For the first time, she felt that she wasn't alone, that someone truly cared about her and her future. She realized that life could offer guidance and support without taking away her strength. As darkness fell over the city, they stood up and began walking back. Nia felt a quiet sense of hope, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges but also new opportunities. She had faced danger, saved lives, and learned to trust, not blindly but wisely. Henry reflected on the day. He realized that helping Nia was more than just providing safety or meals. It was about nurturing her courage, guiding her instincts, and helping her grow into someone who could navigate the world confidently. Nia had already taught him lessons about bravery, awareness, and compassion, lessons he would never forget. As they reached her usual spot, Henry knelt slightly to meet her eyes. Remember, Nia, you're capable of amazing things. You've already made a difference today, and you'll continue to make a difference in the future. I believe in you, Nia's eyes shone. Thank you, Henry, I'll do my best. They shared a quiet moment of understanding. The city continued its hum around them, but in that small corner a new chapter of life had begun. Nia had courage, wisdom, and now guidance. Henry had learned to see the world through her eyes, understanding the power of a small voice and a brave heart. As night fell, Nia curled up in her blanket, feeling safe for the first time in a long while. She knew that life on the streets would still have challenges, but with her courage, knowledge, and Henry's support, she felt ready to face whatever came next. Henry drove away, thinking about the journey they had begun together. He knew that the bond between them was more than just protection. It was respect, trust, and shared understanding. Together they had discovered that courage, care, and attention could overcome fear, change lives, and create hope in even the most unlikely places. The next morning would bring new opportunities, new lessons, and perhaps more danger, but Nia felt prepared. She had learned that bravery mattered, knowledge mattered, and the support of someone who believed in her could make all the difference, and so, a small homeless girl and a billionaire had begun a journey together, a journey of courage, learning, and hope. The streets of the city were still unpredictable, but Nia and Henry had found in each other the guidance and bravery to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Life was no longer just about surviving. It was about growing, learning, and making a difference. And Nia, with her sharp mind and brave heart, was ready for it all.